After 2 seasons of careful setup, Jacaerys' death is far less sudden than you think. It was actually the only logical conclusion of what's been coming all along. Here's every clue that showed Prince Jacaerys was always going to meet his end in the Gullet. The Doctrine that killed his brother.
We must first secure the support of Winterfell, the Eyrie, and Storm's End.
I'll prepare the ravens, Your Grace.
Long before Jace ever flew into battle, he helped craft the strategy that would eventually put him in harm's way. In Season 1, Episode 10, Jace sits at the Black Council table on Dragonstone. Rhaenyra needs allies, and Jace argues that he and Luke should carry her messages themselves. Dragons are faster than ravens, and they make a stronger impression than letters.
We should bear those messages. Dragons can fly faster than ravens, and they're more convincing.
This is the moment he helps establish the Doctrine. In this war, royal children with dragons are not just children, they are political weapons.
Send us.
This is the logic that sends Luke to Storm's End with horrifying consequences. Aemond follows him into the storm on Dragonback, and the rest is history. But somehow, Jace fails to heed the warning. Jace radicalized. By Season 2, Episode 5, the Doctrine has escalated. Lucerys was 4 episodes dead. Daemon had decamped to Harrenhal. Rook's Rest had cost the Blacks Princess Rhaenys and her dragon. Rhaenyra was contained by her own council. And Jacaerys, refused a place in the war by every man at the table, flew vermax to the twins in secret. He told only Baela, instructing her not to inform his mother until he was airborne.
I will treat with the phrase to secure it.
She will not like it.
Don't tell her.
This is a son doubling down on the failed policy that killed his brother. At the seat of House Frey, the boy who arrived to negotiate stood up at the table and made a servant fill his cup before he spoke. He demanded the phrase bend the knee.
What does her grace desire?
Bend knees.
The teenage envoy was in a hostile fortress, staging a power play because he could not endure being treated as a child. He was pushing his luck. I'm proud of you, Jace. But the most damning detail isn't Jace's behavior, it's Rhaenyra's response. In the final scene of that same episode, Jace returns to Dragonstone. Rather than punishing him, Rhaenyra praises him.
I'm proud of you, Jace. You've done our cause a great service.
She sees a son who has finally stepped into the war that his mother could not openly fight. She gives him the only reward a mother in her position can give, full membership at the table. What she should have seen was a son gone rogue, lying to his betrothed, and asserting dominance in foreign halls, all to soothe an injury she had spent 2 seasons failing to recognize. A deep insecurity about his legitimacy. The behavior that put him in the Gullet was the behavior Rhaenyra was rewarding.
I'm proud of you, Jace.
But the seeds of the tragedy were sown much earlier, before Jace was even born. The wound he could not heal. Jacaerys Velaryon was the legitimate heir of a Targaryen princess betrothed to a Targaryen cousin. He was also, by every observable feature, the dark brown hair, the unsilvered eyes, the unmistakable resemblance to Sir Harwin Strong, a bastard. Everybody knew, and everybody pretended not to. This opened a wound in Jace that he could never close. It defined every choice he made in the war, and all of these choices brought him to the one that killed him. Am I a bastard? In Season 1, Episode 6, he finally asks the forbidden question.
Is Harwin Strong my father? Am I a bastard?
You are a Targaryen. That's all that matters.
Rhaenyra does not answer directly.
You are a Targaryen. That's all that matters.
She heard a son seeking comfort, and she gave him a mother's deflection and a refusal to confirm what he already knew. But what Jace heard was that being a Targaryen was the thing that mattered. That nothing else would do. If you are a brown-haired boy whose mother has just told you that only being a Targaryen matters, and you know in your bones that your father was Sir Harwin Strong, then there is only one thing in the world that can prove you are a Targaryen: your dragon. From then on, vermax is not a weapon. He is the thing that keeps Jace's identity from falling apart. If this is tracking with what you saw on your screen, please like and subscribe. We've got a few more reveals on the way. Mongrels. Then, in Season 2, Episode 7, Jace's legitimacy is challenged again, and the mask drops. Rhaenyra, desperate after Rook's Rest, expands Jace's own proposal: recruit Valyrian blood dragon riders from outside the immediate family, into something Jace never intended. She opens it to lowborn bastards, to small folk, to anyone with even a thread of Targaryen ancestry willing to risk being burned alive for a chance at a dragon. Jace explodes, calling them mongrels.
These people are courageous. Mongrels.
The line was ugly, and the show allowed Jace to explain himself in his own words a few sentences later.
Yet I may argue my legitimacy to succeed you because I have a dragon, and now you say you'll strip that from me too.
What Jace was telling his mother, and what she could not quite hear, was that he could not survive that victory. The dragon was not a means to his crown, but instead, the dragon was the only thing that made him a Targaryen. Without it, he was a brown-haired boy with a fancy name, and the entire realm could see it. This tension is behind every decision, every action, and every reaction that we see across the first 2 seasons. A boy who berated himself. The first clue arrives in Season 1 before the war has even begun. We see Jace at his lessons, stumbling over a phrase of High Valyrian. Rhaenyra reassures him. He is a boy, he has time, the language is hard. But Jace will not be reassured. He berates himself in front of his mother for an error a child his age is expected to make. This is showing us a boy who already knows, on some level, that his right to a Valyrian name is contested, and as a result, he cannot afford to stumble over the Valyrian language. Every misstep is a piece of evidence in a case being made against him by half the realm. Before he has ever flown into battle, House of the Dragon is telling us that Jace's identity is something he has to keep proving, and this means he will keep taking risks. The toast to his uncles. By episode 8, the boy has learned to perform. At the welcome feast in King's Landing, with Driftmark hanging in the balance and Vaemond Velaryon freshly beheaded earlier that day for calling him a bastard, Jace raises his cup and toasts his uncles. The same uncles who had publicly questioned his birth. The gesture was small, controlled, delivered with a steady hand. The audience reads it as composure, and his mother reads it as growing up. It was neither. It was the moment Jace learned that he could perform legitimacy in public while privately bleeding from his wounds. From the toast onwards, that is what he will do. He will keep performing, keep flying, and keep volunteering. The Wall's warning. The exchange between Cregan Stark and Jacaerys at the Wall is the most direct piece of evidence the show delivered. Cregan, refusing to commit the bulk of his strength to a southern war, explains why. He tells Jace that his own father once brought King Jacaerys and Queen Alysanne north to see the Wall.
His Grace stood at this very outlook and watched as their dragons, the greatest power in the world, refused to cross it.
What Cregan was saying is that dragons are not infinite, and what's more, they're fully aware of their limits. Jace could not afford to believe this. He needed vermax to be unbreakable. We should be precise about Jace's response to Cregan's warning because it is itself the clue. He treated the Night's Watch as superstition and the dragons that refused as a northern fable. The scoff is small, barely a flicker, but it is there on his face, in show canon, in the wide shots from the Wall. He heard what he wanted to hear, that the old dragons were timid, not that all dragons have a built-in instinct for what lines shouldn't be crossed, an instinct that he himself did not have. The dragons that should have refused followed him anyway. Then, in Season 2, Episode 7, the show pulls the trigger on the foreshadowing it loaded in Episode 1. Vermithor, the dragon that once refused to cross the Wall, accepts Hugh Hammer. Silverwing, the dragon that once stood beside Vermithor in that refusal, accepts Ulf the White. Seasmoke accepts Adam of Hull. 3 dragons, 3 new riders, the strike force assembled. And alongside them, Jacaerys, mounted on vermax, the youngest dragon of the 4, the only one without the instincts of an old dragon. The instinct that saved Vermithor and Silverwing at the Wall has been overridden. The dragons now follow a rider, and this rider is going to the Gullet to heal a wound that cannot be healed. The sulking before the storm. The wound widens in the final hour of Season 2 and the final hour before the war. On the eve of the Triarchy fleet sailing, Baela finds Jace in the Dragonstone Library. He calls the new dragon riders an insult to Targaryens. Baela, the only person in his life who has ever spoken to him entirely without flattery, tells him plainly that it does not matter who his father is. She tells him that he is the prince and the heir to the throne regardless.
Do you believe that you are the first noble heir who was not sired by his noble father? Such is the way of the world.
She is right, but he cannot hear it. This is the last on-screen glimpse of Jace's struggle before Season 3. He is not thinking clearly, picking at his open wound rather than listening to the woman who loves him. The dragon too young. Now let's talk about some hard physical facts. Jacaerys rode a junior-tier dragon in a war fought by adults. The show's dragon hierarchy has been made clear through Seasons 1 and 2. Vhagar dwarfs every other living dragon. Below her are Vermithor and Silverwing, and below them sits Caraxes, Daemon's mount. Below Caraxes is Melees, the fastest dragon in the skies. Then come Syrax, Sea Smoke, and Sunfire. Vermax is below all of them. He belonged to a junior tier, alongside Arax, Tyraxes, Moondancer, and Stormcloud, that are considered children's dragons. Of course they are lethal in the right circumstances, but they are smaller and less experienced, with shorter wingspans and weaker fire. A young dragon also flies lower. This was all shown on screen for 2 whole seasons. Anyone watching could see that Vermax did not belong in the same skies as Vhagar. And of course, we did not have to imagine how this would end after what happened to Luke. The mechanism was the same with Jace. The Triarchy at the Gullet was not Aemond on Vhagar, but the Triarchy had something Aemond did not. They had around 100 ships, they had crossbows, and they had a recent experience of fighting Daemon on Caraxes. Everyone who mattered knew the danger. No one who mattered prevented Jace from flying to his death. So how did the people who loved him miss the destructive path that Jace was following? Every time Jace overcompensated, Rhaenyra read it as an act of growth. The boy who stood up to the phrase was a son finally claiming his place. The boy who proposed the Dragon Seed's gambit was a son becoming a strategist. Rhaenyra was watching her son try to outrun his own paternity through a series of escalating displays of Targaryen-ness, and she was cheering each display. The cheers became the orders, and those orders put him in the gullet. She did not ground him, she did not assign him a defensive role, she did not pair him with an older dragon rider when the approaching Triarchy fleet was confirmed in the finale. And Sheriko Lohar's 6 chilling words, "To the gullet on the morrow!" landed on Dragonstone like a sentence. She held counsel. She gave him a place at the table. She let the dragon fly. The smoking gun is in the Queen's own mouth on screen, while the Triarchy was still gathering its ships. So every clue was on screen, in dialogue, in framing, and in Rhaenyra's own words. A preventable tragedy, and yet seemingly destined to occur. That's it for our breakdown. If you think we missed anything, let us know in the comments. And if you want to see more like this, hit like and subscribe. We'll see you for the next one.